This is the ripple effect of well-being in work and life. I'm Dr. Ken Thompson, here with Dr. Stephanie Romero.
On this show, we explore how holistic well-being practices can transform our individual lives and our collective capacity for care.
We're bringing you the science, the stories, and the specific practices that reduce stress and build resilience in our homes, our offices, and our communities.
We're talking to people to see how their perspectives, practices, and work are creating a ripple effect for a better world.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to Awaken's Ripple Effect podcast. My guest today is Janice Martellucci, the Executive Director of Peace in Schools. Janice is an educator and nonprofit leader whose work is dedicated to uplifting the agency and well-being of young people. Since 2015, Janice has been a true change maker in the field of mindfulness education. She played an integral role in a historic milestone, designing and implementing the nation's very first 4-credit, semester-long mindfulness course in a public high school. Through her leadership, transformative mindfulness education now reaches thousands of teens and educators every year. Her impact has been recognized on the national stage. In 2016, she was named a Skidmore Prize winner for her rising leadership. And in 2018, the high school class she taught became the subject of an award-winning research project. By 2020, Business Insider featured her as one of the doers, 25 trailblazers creating hope and inspiring us. Most recently, she took the stage as a keynote speaker for Stanford University's 2025 Contemplation by Design Summit. Whether she's in the classroom or leading a community movement, Janice is a tireless champion for mental health and resiliency of our youth and their teachers. Janice, thank you so much for being on the Ripple Effect podcast. I'm excited to deepen our relationship and get to know you a little bit better.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
So I always love to start, just because I love to hear it, the journey people have had that has led them to meditation or mindfulness. Sometimes people have a life crisis or some flash that happens in their life that brings them to mindfulness or meditation. And I just love to hear your journey.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. I grew up in a household. I grew up raised Catholic. My mom, was very traditional Catholic, and I probably went to mass multiple times a week. My dad was agnostic, but he was a world religions teacher, and both of them together were botanists. And so I grew up watching a lot of, like, having access to and seeing adults and even children around me in contemplation in different forms. So, there's obviously the Catholic version of it, which as I got older and I'm queer, I came out and I had my own journey with kind of stepping away from the Catholic Church. But I've always been grateful to have that access of, like, this thing that brings people together, and there's often a lot of silence and there's this feeling. And I would even see it in my parents. We'd do these camping trips. I grew up in Sacramento, California, and we'd go to the desert, and I would just watch my dad, like, laying on his belly in the desert, just like looking at the tiniest flowers with so much awe. And so, I always had access to that. And then, I grew up as a teen and I had my teen experience. There's so much, like, questioning and identity. And I kind of took a step back from that field. But then the older I got into college and so on, life got harder. I started to struggle and I started seeking, so it felt like something was missing. And I think that was coupled with, like, as I was reaching the end of kind of my traditional schooling, um, I started to realize that my worth, my value, I'd always based on externals. and the externals were starting to change and they were starting to feel slippery and out of control. And some of them were really like uncomfortable and bad. Like I had my first heartbreak. My dad got really ill and ended up passing away. And just a handful of other things where I pretty much like called the shots. I was like, if this is my strategy, it's not, it's failing me. Like, what am I can't keep going like this. And so I started seeking and I had a lot of resistance to, I think I didn't want to like admit that I needed help. I think that like I was a very strong-willed, like I'm just gonna white knuckle it through this. But I got to the point of being like, well, that's not working. So I think I was in between my junior and senior year of college, and I came home for the summer and I just started trying a bunch of things. And one of them was yoga. And at the yoga studio, I saw there was a meditation class. And through my dad, I'd heard, again, he taught world religions. I'd heard of these different things. And I knew that he was really drawn to a lot of Eastern traditions and practices. And so I was like, I'll try it. And so I went. And I just will never forget. It was a community-based class, the teacher, and I just remember feeling like, whatever she has, I want it. Like she's doing something differently. She's existing differently. Like the missing thing that I'm seeking, I feel it in her. And so I approached her after class and she did one-to-one sessions and she became my first meditation teacher. And what's really sweet about it is that she's also the founder of Peace in Schools. So my journey with Peace in Schools actually started 5 years before the nonprofit existed through me meeting Caverly Morgan. And that was, yeah, the most beautiful and like almost like homecoming because again, I had this experience as a child, this like reverence, this contemplation, this being in community around something that really matters, but can feel invisible sometimes. And so I got to kind of like reclaim that, but in a form that like honored who I was and my identity, and that like felt like home to me. Mm.
I love that story. That's a great
Mhm. Mhm.
a great story of like both how you found meditation and also how you found peace in schools. So
Yeah.
that's really, really amazing. And so I guess that's a great segue there to your path in your career and how it led to peace in schools. And I know you were an educator before that, so maybe you could talk a little bit about how that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So Caverly and I stayed in close touch. Again, she was like my main meditation teacher. And I was at the time working in outdoor environmental education with middle schoolers, all ages, really. And I love that again, like I had this connection to nature through my parents. But it's still it still felt hard because, I'd be out in the woods with these kids and I remember so vividly this one trip I was doing, just watching how the teachers were interacting with the students and being like, "Oh, this is like undoing the beauty that we're in to have this kind of like harshness or this, it was one of those interactions where it just felt really like dehumanizing of the child, like not honoring the developmental stage that they're in and not like letting them be imperfect and this and that. And so I was starting to kind of, right when I was starting to question, like, can I stick on this life path? Literally, Caverly called me and was like, will you move to Portland and help me launch Peace in Schools? And I said yes. And so I went from being a student of the practice to then jumping into being a teacher, which is like a whole different experience, which I know you know well, Stephanie. Mm.
That's, actually so parallels my journey of being in schools and working with teachers and feeling that either individual teachers or the system of education was dehumanizing the students and the teachers. So I feel,
Exactly.
yeah, I feel like the teachers are just reenacting what's like happening to them, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And it wasn't like, I don't even know that it was like a failing of that teacher. It was, yeah, it was just like, it reminded me of like my own journey of like just this question, like there has to be another way. Like, what are we missing? What is missing from this equation? Because, we all go into education for a love of teaching or a love of young people. And then sometimes something happens and you don't feel that love anymore, or, it feels too far away. And I could see it in myself too at times, just like that burnout feeling. So just wanting to pause and see what else was out there. And I had so much trust in this practice and so much trust in Caverly that I didn't really fully know what I was getting into, but I was like, I need to try it.
Yeah, it's so good. I think my own aspiration for transforming educational institutions, and how daunting it actually is. It's a hard one. So I guess,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe talk to me. So it's amazing that you were there right at the beginning with Caverly helping get that started, and you're still there. So
Yeah.
maybe you could talk a little bit about what Peace in Schools is about, and having said what we just said about the institutions of schools, like what does that actually represent and what's the goal and what does peace in, like literally peace in schools actually
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah, Peace in Schools. So we're a mindfulness nonprofit. We focus on teens and educators, and families. And you know what's so special about what we do, and what I flew across the country to join Caverly to start, is we launched the country's first 4 credit semester long mindfulness class in public high schools. And so, it's quite literally during the school day. Like a teen goes to math, they go to biology, they go to mindful studies. So it creates this access. And like right there, that systems change, right? Like it's not just sprinkling in a little bit of peace on top of like the hecticness. It's like treating this class focused on well-being as though it's like it should be part of, the ecosystem of education. And so that was like our bread and butter, for the first decade of our existence. Like we got into this high school, this public high school system in Oregon, Portland Public Schools, really because of this champion principal who saw what Caverly was doing after school and was like, I want this to get to more students. So we got in, and then it just grew like wildfire those first few years, and we really got to focus on just like creating the class, refining it, partnering with the students and doing that, and then proving it, like getting some data, getting some evaluation. Um, and since, what's so special about the class, because we have so much time with them, we get to go really deep. And that like really scratched my itch of, what I was longing for as an educator. And teens are so special, right? Like they're like the sunset of childhood and adulthood. The dawn hasn't quite begun. Their brains are in this amazing phase of development. They're ready to have these deep conversations, and they're in a space of seeking as well. Like I really resonated with that. And so to give them just this like smorgasbord of options and experiences that are a pathway to well-being, a pathway to um, like this inner resilience, that can never be taken from them, that can never be broken. Now that I'm a mother as well, like that is with all that's going on in the world, with all the things we can't control, like I want them to know and feel inside themselves what can never be broken, what's always been good, where they can always go for refuge, where they can always find joy. And so to actually equip our young people structurally, systematically, like with that as part of their education. So that's the heart of what Peace in Schools is about. We focus on teens, but because, we've been doing this for 15 years now. So we have grown a lot, and we've also shifted our model where we're still doing the class, but we're now training instead of like me going in as an employee, we're now training educators in high schools to do it and partnering with the whole high school. And we've been really thrilled with the results of that shift. We've just been keeping our eye on like how do we grow without losing that depth and that transformation.
Yeah, so that, has also been some of the work that we've done. And I'm just really curious around how do you train those educators? Like, what's the prereq, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to teach mindfulness, even as a practitioner of many, many years. And
Yep.
then when you're trying to train educators who may be new to the practice, like, yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we had so many conversations about this and we learned a lot. We learned a lot through the years. I think when we started, we were like, yes, let's hire, the people with decades of meditation and all this experience. And we pretty quickly learned, okay, just because you're a contemplative, you have all this experience doesn't mean one that you love teens or really know how to be with them. And two, it doesn't mean that you know how to thrive inside such a difficult system. So we found that a lot of times the folks that we hired outside of education just couldn't hang with like the intensity. I mean, teachers are freaking warriors. Like they don't get to eat when they're hungry. They don't get to pee when they need to pee. Like they have hundreds of students that they're tracking. So we actually found that if we take a teacher who has already said yes to that system because of their love of students, and we invite them in to allowing like unconditional love to be part of what they get to focus on, they're like, sign me up. Like, what do you mean I get to do this during the day? So we've actually found it's much simpler for us to teach the depth of the practice and the embodiment than it is to teach kind of the grit and the love of teens. And that's what our new model is based on. And that said, like we go deep. Like you have an 150-hour training with us if you're a teacher that's going to teach this semester-long course. And that includes two in-person retreats. The first of which is all about you. Like we don't talk about students. Like we really focus on just you're going to experience this for yourself. And then the whole first year of implementation, they have like a one-to-one call with a mentor and a cohort group call. So there's a lot of support in the rollout. Um, but yeah, that's kind of I have found that most human beings, when introduced to the heart of what this practice really is, not what we've been taught that it is, not when it's co-opted and kind of misused, when they really get to touch what it is, that's a door that just blows wide open.
Uh, that's amazing. Very cool. The other thing you mentioned is data collection, and I myself
Yeah.
geek out on that. So I'm
Mhm.
just curious if you could share, maybe just a little bit of what have been the key findings and the research you've been doing. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So since we've been doing this since 2014, and since then we've served over 6,500 teens. So we have our own like evaluation on over 6,500 teens. And then in addition to that, we did do some research with Johns Hopkins, and both of the findings pretty much match each other. And we really focus on like the social emotional outcomes, right? So the things that if you're a teen and you take this class, kind of regardless of why you got there, whether you opted in because you thought it would be relaxing, whether your counselor referred you, whether you just showed up and had no idea, like the outcomes across the board tend to be you're going to be more present. You're going to have more access to compassion for yourself and others. You're going to feel a greater sense of belonging. You're going to know how to deal with stress better, bounce back from challenges better, and just have like a whole new vocabulary around how to uh, meet the moment, And when we first, it was really great to get the Johns Hopkins study done because it really confirmed from an external source what we had seen and felt, which is that like mindful studies is transformational. I think what surprised us in that study, so that study focused on the effects of mindfulness on youth, particularly youth with adverse childhood experiences, so with trauma. And one thing that surprised us, Stephanie, was how the researcher was actually like blown away by how high the ACEs were. And this was like back in 2018. So I don't know, I imagine it'd be the same or maybe even higher now. So just like how much trauma that our young people are experiencing. And then the study found that, yeah, the students with high ACEs, LGBTQ plus students, and girls had all those same statistically significant outcomes, but like amplified. So it just confirmed that it's also a space of like healing, for those that have gone through or are going through something really difficult.
That really resonates with my own personal experience with bringing meditation and mindfulness into my own classroom when I was a teacher. One of the reasons that I started Awaken Pittsburgh was because I noticed that the kids who seemed to need the most support or who were struggling the most were the ones that I could really tell were benefiting the most
Yeah. Yeah.
by bringing meditation and mindfulness into my classroom. And that is the thing that was like, what is happening here? And that's why I ended up writing my dissertation on mindfulness and education, because I was like, how is this a thing? Like, I knew my own personal transformation from meditation, but then when I started bringing it into my school, I was like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's what you're saying. It's reminding me of what Dr. Vivek Murthy has said about the teen mental health crisis. Like this is something that we can fix. Like it's not inherent. None of this is inherent. And I think that mindfulness, this like trauma informed, like equity centered practice that's like honoring the roots, when it's done kind of quote unquote the right way with an embodied educator, um, it's really reminding us of that. It's like bringing these students back to that inherent wholeness. And again, so it's not like fixing them. It's not, we're not the saviors or anything like that, but in a world, in a system that's like just always reflecting back to them what they're not, like, oh my God, it's yeah, there's nothing more healing and safe than actually being in touch with all of who you are.
So you mentioned that original school where you had your first four credit class and that principal was really an advocate. I know that you've been expanding and going in other places. I'm just curious around like what's that conversation to have with an administrator
Yeah.
to have them have like a four credit, because the after school thing or
Yep.
like that folks are like, sure, we can offer an after school thing. But for
Yeah.
a four credit high school class, like I'm just curious, what's the secret sauce at convincing them that could happen or should happen?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that very first time it really was like the stars aligned and there was this open door. Mindfulness was kind of unheard of at that time. It was a trusted principle, he championed it. And then really what made it happen is the students because they showed up. He was like, if you want to, you can do a little demonstration of the class. If maybe 20 sign up, I'll see if I can do it. And hundreds, wanted it that first time. So that really got us in the door. And then once something exists, it's always easier to grow, right? Because it's real. You can point at it. So I'll say like that's how we started. Here's what's it's in 70, you know this probably more than anyone because this is what we talked about the first time we met. It is so hard to bring this work into public education. I mean, if you're listening and you're lit up, I'm glad you are. And I'll be so transparent. This work is hard. It is slow. The system wasn't designed for this. There's 101 plus million obstacles. But here's the thing the obstacles are all structural and systemic and so that's what comes up in the meetings with principals. I have never in 15 years of doing this, I have never met a principal who didn't understand the power of what we're doing and didn't want it. They often don't know how to do it, or they feel like their hands are tied, or it's not the right moment, or this and that. But that's where we've had to really focus on like principals and students. And now we know teachers as well want this. So, how can we work with the ones who want it the most to make it happen? And what structural barriers can we shift and let go of? And uh, and help them with, so we can grow. And that's been our journey the last, 5 years really, and as we continue. So every conversation looks different, but really the ask that we have now with our new model is, will you give us a teacher to train and support and just give part of their teaching time to this class? So it's they don't have to hire anyone new. It's like a minimal cost for the time that they're away. Um, and then there's like so much support during the rollout. So and we've been offering it, this new model, we've been offering it for free, and we're just starting discussions around schools paying for a portion of it. Um, so I'll report back on how that's going, but I think there is money for well-being. Um, and in the meantime, we've been relying a lot on philanthropy. There's a lot of support. But I will say, like, I don't know if you've encountered this, Stephanie, like so much of the money out there, whether it's going to schools or whether it's philanthropy, is going towards either not going towards mental health or going towards like behavioral mental health. So, like more clinical interventions. Whereas what we're doing is a more universal, any student can take it. And it's not therapy, right? It's not clinical, but it is deeply effective. So that's where Peace in Schools is trying to grow enough that we can continue to get enough data that we can advocate and like lobby at higher levels.
Yeah, that's so necessary because I think, at least in the conversations and what I've seen with schools, is they kind of want to outsource the mental
Hmm.
health stuff, and they'll
Yeah.
contract with an organization that provides mental health services, and so they'll
Mhm.
take the kids with the issues. I'm doing air quotes here because this is going to be
Yeah.
audio only. They're, kids that had issues, and like outsource that to a, a treatment organization instead of building in, like what you're saying, the universal. And so schools in our area have often used like a positive behavioral PBIS model, right?
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
that bottom tier of that universal skill building is often completely lacking. Like they're not doing it. And what you're doing and the work that Awaken has tried to do is really like, how do we build that out?
Well, the paradigm in schools right now, when you talk about like mental health prevention work, like my wife worked as a tier 3 crisis counselor in high school. And like prevention quite literally means like stopping a child from jumping off a bridge before they jump. And that's all that they can have time for. Like that is a full time, and it's so necessary, but there needs to be something more upstream. Right. Yeah, it's the skill building. And I think part of our argument too is, I mean, one, we could prevent more children from getting to that point, but every young person deserves this as just like a rite of passage through education. You deserve to know how your brain works and how your body's connected to that and understand how to be in relationship in skillful ways and have the tools you need to de-escalate your own arguments and like all the things I've already said about resilience, like I think we're always walking this line at Peace in Schools of like, because it's so easy to fall into deficit framing. Like our teens are in crisis, we need to come, rescue them. But really, this is about like empowerment. And this is about, I always say, like, PE didn't exist until it did. And now you can't find a school in the country that doesn't have it. Like, we need to make that shift around well-being and education. And then all the other things that we care about will get better. Like truly, like all the other like behavioral stuff, classroom management, academics, like etc., will get better if students are allowed to access their full humanity during the school day in safe ways. It's just that's why I've been in it for so long, Stephanie. Like it feels possible in our lifetimes. It doesn't feel easy, but it feels obviously so worthwhile.
Yeah, totally agree. And I really, really hope that our school systems move away from the putting fires out
Yeah.
mental health approach, right?
Yeah.
To, like, oh, this kid has a problem. Let's get him some help or her some help.
Hmm.
To how do we build that resilience and skill base and emotional intelligence in all kids so that they can be happy, healthy humans.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think one thing that's special about our approach, but also challenging for growth is just it's a human based approach. Like our model is that there's an in-person and embodied supported educator with a community of teens. It's not just one to one. It's I think it works so well because of those things. That's our secret sauce. It's the embodied teacher. It's that it's happening in a community of teens where they can get to know each other. Um, and it's long enough. We have enough time with them, and it's like developed for this stage, for adolescents. Like it's interesting, right? And they find they want to go deeper into it.
I want to shift questions just a little bit. You've been doing this for a hot minute. There's a lot
Mhm.
of challenges. Our
Mhm.
world right now is very stressful and polarized. How do you keep your own mental health and well-being balance? And like I still hear your passion even after years of doing this. So how
Yeah.
how are you working with all that for yourself?
I can't tell you how many times I've said thank God for mindfulness, like my own practice, like it all, I started as a student, right? Like, and I think so when I found mindfulness, it did so many things for me. It allowed me to touch into this resilience, and it empowered me to like place my attention where I wanted it to be. And that included on like, okay, I'm gonna place my attention on my own goodness. And then I got to become a teacher. And I would kind of sum up like my favorite and like the most beautiful part of being a teacher is I got to learn how to do that outwards. So like my journey was like, okay, first I'm going to learn how to do this inside, and now I'm going to do it with my teens. And I loved that era of like, okay, I'm going to work, and whatever the teens are doing, like my job is to keep my eye on their hearts and their wholeness, like no matter what. And then when that's happening, you have so much possibility around how you respond to what's happening. And it really surprises people a lot of the time because you're not falling for the story that something's wrong with them or they're bad or whatever. And then I became executive director, which I never really set out to do, but just in kind of the arc of our growth, it was during the pandemic and there was a lot of change. And I woke up one morning and I was like, oh, it has to be me. It has to be me. And I talked to the board and Caverly Morgan, our founder, and I became the ED during a lot of change. And I remember promising myself, I was like, this could go either way. Like I could like lose myself to the grind and the pressure and the stress. Again, coming from kind of a conditioned system that is really slanted towards looking outwards, to see if I'm okay. I was like, or it's gonna like really challenge me to like break free from that even more. Like, our tagline at Peace in Schools is liberate mind and heart. And I was like, okay, this is my opportunity to really see. And I have been so happily surprised that it doesn't feel that different than being a teacher. It's like it's like keeping my anchor on the things that matter most while there's just like noise and chaos. And and so my practice is why I've been able to keep passionate. And then the second thing I'll just say is community, because I'm not perfect. Like I'm not grounded in every moment, but we've created such a culture at the staff of Peace in Schools that it's okay for me to be wobbly because not everyone's wobbling at the same moment. And so like we've created an ecosystem where like I can have moments of doubt. And especially like I've had two kids in the last 6 years. Like doing this job postpartum was, ooh, that was like one of the hardest moments of my life. And I could wobble and it was okay. So I think, another like theme that we do in the classroom with the teens is like always coming back, like always returning and always giving yourself permission to start over with kindness. And so I think I think I've just probably started over as ED with kindness as executive director like hundreds of times. Like I've given myself permission to just like start over and start over. And so there is this freshness. It still feels, I tell people it still feels new, even though like I literally started in 2015. It's been over a decade, you know? Hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I feel
Hmm.
like, also as an executive director over here in leadership roles, when the folks that we're leading, right? Trying to lead,
Hmm.
guiding,
Hmm.
that we're supervising, however you want to frame that, when they see us giving ourselves grace
Hmm.
and allowing, like you said, allowing ourselves to wobble, like showing our own humanity, giving ourselves grace in that, or even reaching out for their help, it's
Yeah.
an example of how they can be, and like allowing that space for us all to be human together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, as you're talking, Stephanie, like there's something in this practice. I see it in the classroom with teachers, myself, our team. It's like learning how to be undefended because you know that there's something that can't break. And there's this like fearlessness that comes not out of ego or arrogance, but out of like trust. And it's not a self-centered trust, but it kind of goes back to this like, yeah, this like bigger feeling that there's this thread that I followed my whole life that I feel so grateful for that I first experienced as a child, with my parents. And yeah, but it's so empowering to learn how to lead, but not have to do so with force, you know? Like you can be powerful and soft at the same time. And I think that's what we're giving our young people permission. You can be human, like, and strong, and you can be a badass and you can do the things you want to do. And you don't need to wreck yourself or others while you're doing it. Like you have options. Mhm.
Yeah, and I love that idea of a powerful and soft leader. Like you can come alongside folks and work alongside them as a leader as
Yeah,
opposed to that hierarchical top
absolutely.
down kind of forceful model that we often see. And I think that they're, at least for me, trying to do that,
Mhm.
you can start from the place of care.
Yeah. And there can be nuance. I mean, I think that's another thing that if there's one thing our teens get out of the class, it's like how to hold nuance. Like we just had the semester end projects, and one of the teens, they come up with like reminders, things they want to remember after the semester. And one teen just wrote, two things can be true. It's like so simple, but so profound, right? And I I just I just feel like this world needs so much more of that. Like you don't have to sacrifice. I think sometimes people are surprised when either they meet me or they feel the culture of our team. Like we get stuff done. We are detailed. We hold each other accountable. Like, we're but then at the same time there is this like it's a dance. And I we're such a society that like falls into duality all the time. Like you're either soft, and like mindful, or you're like getting stuff done. And I think that's part of why we've been successful is because there's this craving and this seeking for another way from teens, from educators, from nonprofit workers that, we can't really exist. We're humans, we're complicated creatures. We're not meant to just be in one camp only.
Yeah, that just resonates so deeply with me. I love the two things can be true.
Yeah, it's so simple. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're listening, just try that out at some point today when you're frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It might
Yeah.
shift everything,
It
you know?
might. It might. Well, just thinking that we should be wrapping up a little bit here, Janice. I'm curious if there was anything that you had hoped to talk about that I didn't ask about. Was there anything you wanted to make sure to say?
Well, I think just if you're listening, we're growing in high schools. We're mostly on the West Coast right now, but hoping that will change. But because we've had so much success with training educators and like just such good feedback that we're opening up to doing that more. So we just launched our training institute. In a couple of weeks, they're going to join these high school educators on retreat. So if you're a parent, if you're like a youth serving professional in a school or outside of school in a different way, like come on retreat with us, come learn with us, come taste what this is and bring it back. Yeah, I think that's all.
Great. What a wonderful invitation. We'll make sure that your contact info or what, at least the website is in the details
Yeah.
for folks. So look down there in the details. Well, I love to end all of the episodes asking folks if there is a favorite mindfulness resource, a book, a podcast, whatever it is that has supported you in your practice, that in case someone's listening and they are searching for something, they could check it out. So is there anything you want to recommend?
Yes, I'll share two, and I want to give a shout out to the Peace in Schools founder, Caverly Morgan. She's written both these books. So a kid's book about mindfulness. So if you have a young one and you want to share that with them. And then her other book, which has a lot about peace in schools in it, is called The Heart of Who We Are, Realizing Freedom Together. And both of those are by Caverly Morgan.
Amazing. Great. I love that you gave us a kid's book. We don't always get those, so that's wonderful too. I'm definitely going to check it out. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and your heart in this conversation. I have appreciated it so much.
Likewise, Stephanie, thanks for making this platform.
Yeah, my great pleasure.